Wava Osborne, who is extremely well known to us, who has been a bulwark of this congregation for many, many years, serving as our church coordinator and just all-round anchor, I think, in many ways. And she's going to be speaking about the opposite of Namaste. So I'll let her explain what she means by that.
Good morning. My joy is that I have finally decided that I am going to have this hip fixed. My concern, though, I saw the doctor on Friday, and nice young man, in his looks like 40s or something, and has a great personality and patient-side manner, so to speak. And he told me, he said, I was looking at x-rays this morning and I saw this guy, and he said, that is the worst hip I have ever seen. And then he said, I looked at yours and it's much worse. So anyway, I mean, if you're going to be bad, you might as well really bad. So anyhow. Well, thank you for coming out this morning, and if you keep an eye on the weather, and if it starts snowing, I will cut it off. I can cut it off anytime, but I don't want to, because I have some fun stuff to tell you, and this morning I'm going to be talking about 3 different books. Primarily, the one by Timber Hawkeye in the middle is the Opposite of Namaste. And then the second one that I will throw in there is All the Worst Humans, How I Made News for Dictators, Tycoons, and Politicians by Phil Woodson. You will never, ever, ever look at the news again the same way if you read this book. I promise you. And then the other one is Blind Spots by Dr. Marty McCary, MD. And by the way, he has been nominated to head up the FDA by President-elect Trump. And after reading his book, I think he would be marvelous. So that's in the for what it's worth category. A little bit about the main author that I'm going to be talking about, the opposite of, is Timber Hawkeye, and this is a chosen name. He was born in Israel. He is Jewish. He moved to the States with his family when he was 13. He is an ordained Buddhist monk, and he uses a Hindu mantra in the morning, and meditation is a Catholic prayer. His altar at home features a statue of Jesus, one of the Buddha, and another of St. Francis of Assisi. He's a best-selling author, podcast producer, and publisher, and an international speaker. Now, does this sound familiar? It's Thanksgiving. The turkey is coming out of the oven. The house smells delicious. There's pies and cakes galore, and you just can't wait to dig in. Your family's visiting for the holidays. Now, at least one of your guests is likely to say something offensive, and there's a good chance that someone may drink too much and then start talking politics, pick a fight, or be passive-aggressive enough to make a snide comment about your house, about your kids, or just religion, anything. And then they have the audacity to say, the problem with the world today is people like you. And you're off. So where does it go from here? All forms of media intentionally dramatize the information we process. They offer us written words, audio, video, stimulation around the clock. And behind the scenes, there's a lot going on. In his book, Phil Elwood talks about all the worst humans, and he is a public relations operative. He has spent 20 years in the industry. He exposes the dark underbelly of the $129 billion industry. And he reveals the truth about how to spin and to sell to the public the view that he wants you, or his client, his wealthy client, wants you to see. He writes of the money, the power, the politics, and the control. And he says, if you have enough money, you can get the news spun any way you wish. Isn't it interesting how you hear the same thing from 2 or 3 different sources, and it's all a little bit different, just depending on the width of the topic. He says that there's 300,000 people employed in the PR industry in the United States, whereas there's about 40,000 journalists. Now that's 7.5 times more people spinning than is writing. He says we always find a news outlet to make our clients' stories appear legitimate. We know how to place a story. It will usually take us about a month, about 20 phone calls. We never, or try never, to use Gmail because that leaves a trail. We use Signal or WhatsApp because there's no trace. Question. Hawkeye asks us, why are we so obsessed with wanting to know what the future holds? Most of our anguish comes from our discomfort with uncertainty. Organized religions attempt to ease that discomfort by telling us exactly where we're going and exactly where we came from. Eastern philosophies, on the other hand, that's all right. Eastern philosophies, on the other hand, tell us we can't know where we came from, we can't know where we're going, but we will be all right. I kind of like that. Hawkeye writes, there is a growing trend of entitlement, it seems, and it defies logic. He said, people not only believe they deserve privilege that they haven't earned, but no matter how much they get, they still believe the world owes them more. He continues, we cannot be at war with ourselves and live at peace at the same time. It's nobody's responsibility to make you feel good about yourself. There's no need to react to everything that we see, that we hear, or that we read. Certain things in the world will continue to upset us, at which point we can make decisions in line with our values, but we need not do it with anger. Promote what you love instead of bashing what you hate. Tell me what you stand for instead of what you're against. We excel at judging people, and we do it. We fail miserably in trying to understand the why behind their actions. Why did they do that? Why did he cut me off? Why do we assume that we know what's best? Why is always being right important? Do you go through life assuming your perspective is not only right, but superior? It's important to reevaluate as we go along and frequently question things that made sense to us a decade ago. Do you see the same thing as a child, as a young adult, and now as an aging person? Is it time to make a change? Does it still make sense to you? Let go of the things you no longer attach to in relationships, in jobs, in food choices, and don't be afraid to let go because it might disappoint. Let go, move on, find now what works for you, live in line with your needs and your values and not somebody else's. No matter how we look at anything, everything is in constant flux. This is temporary, and it will pass. Temporary can mean a minute, an hour, a month, a year, or even a lifetime, but it will pass. You may too, but it will pass. Tell yourself, I can get through this. When I read that, I thought about Jim and Gail Graw, and they had a horrible accident out in Arizona in 23, I believe it was. Just within an inch of both lives, and especially with Jim. And every time, we kept in touch with them. They're neighbors, they're friends. Tennis, used to be a tennis buddy of Ken. But anyway, every time that Ken talked to them, there was this optimism in Jim's voice that everything would be okay. I am going to get through this. I am going to get through this. And they did. If we desire anything to such a degree that we are miserable unless we attain it, that desire ignites and fuels our suffering. And the antidote for that desire is acceptance. Now, acceptance is not approval. Accepting things like war, racism, global warming, animal cruelty, that doesn't mean that we stop doing what we can to minimize the harmful effects. It means we accept it as part of our current reality, and while we must remain peaceful. If we don't, we become part of the problem that we are trying to eradicate. When you hate the hater, you become the hater. And nobody can drive you crazy unless you give them the keys. If how you think about yourself is contingent on someone else's opinion of you, then your sense of self-worth fluctuates up and down, depending on who you're around. Relying on validation from other people for our sense of self-worth puts us in a codependent relationship with the entire world. To validate your own sense of self-worth, simply do good to feel good. It's that simple. Hawkeye writes about discipline. From issues such as mass shootings, global warfare, the environment, immigration, elections, and our own health, it's no surprise that we feel overwhelmed and ill-equipped to do anything at all about it. That's just it. We can't do it all. What we can do is one thing at a time. The Serenity Prayer invites us to accept the things we cannot change, have the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that just may be the key, to know the difference. Let's stop assuming, presuming, or deciding things for others but rather decide for ourselves what's important, what's valuable, what's beautiful, what's worthy of our time and energy and attention. If you want peace, start by being peaceful. On privilege. Privilege is when you think something isn't a problem just because it doesn't personally affect you. We can all benefit from taking inventory of our privileges. Owning up to your own shortcomings comes across as an invitation for the other person to do the same. When we push our beliefs on someone else, we literally push them away, be it religion, politics, race, immigration, the environment, or health issues. Again, where do you get your news, and do you have a blind spot? Remaining composed is not the same as letting people walk all over you. It's actually the opposite. When you blame someone else for your behavior, that gives them the power to manipulate you. If you blame someone else for making you angry, you're essentially telling them that they have you wrapped around their little finger, and they probably do. If you remain calm no matter what happens, and stick to your conviction to be less reactive, to remain peaceful, regardless of what's going on around you or inside, that is your superpower. Remain calm. Feel your temper, understand your temper, but don't lose your temper, even when you're outraged. Compose yourself. We can be a force for change. Everything becomes more enjoyable when we let go of the illusion that we have to know how or complain about how the world should behave or how people should behave, what we should be doing. You should be doing this. Just because the situation is stressful doesn't mean you have to be stressed. Our response is the one thing that we can control. Choosing to get angry, frustrated, hurt, or upset is a complete waste of our power, which is why we feel powerless. To add insult to injury, we then expect people who were careless with us and trampled on our feelings to do the mending. Hawkeye says, hey, this is like getting upset with your puppy for peeing on the floor, and then you expect your puppy to clean it up. We need to stop blaming ourselves for our own lack of internal peace. It's not about getting everyone to believe in line with what we think is right. It's about staying peaceful above the fray. There will always be something or someone testing our patience. We can learn what that situation is teaching us, or how we can quit blaming ourselves for the emotional state, our emotional state, or relatives, or co-workers, or politicians, or presidents, or religion. Blaming others will take a toll on your physical and mental well-being. We have all been lied to, cheated on, overworked, underpaid, wronged, misunderstood, and underappreciated. Yet, we're still here, and we're not broken. In fact, we will likely be wronged again, lied to, cheated on, forever. Stop blaming people for how you feel. Let it go. Let it go. The Buddha says our life is shaped by our mind, We become what we think. So the next time you experience devastation or grief, tap into the strength with which you made it this far. Access the same strength that you will carry with you through whatever comes next. If we don't heal from what hurts us, we end up bleeding on people that didn't cut us. To understand hatred, we must be honest about where it hides in us. Sometimes it dresses up as bigotry, discrimination, prejudice, self-righteousness, preference, favoritism, bias, convenience, or partiality. Once we see it in ourselves, we can then recognize it in those around us. From the Buddha, how easy it is to see your brother's faults. How hard it is to see your own. You mock his, but yours you hide. Dwelling on your brother's faults multiplies your own. The golden rule, which many of us were raised with, do unto others as you will have them do unto you, is an outmoded model. It's the platinum rule. Treat others the way they wish to be treated. And how do you know that? You don't unless you ask. Treat them the way they wish to be treated. While we're all wired for connection with one another, we're programmed for protection from one another. This can create miles of separation between us and explains why so many of us feel alone and disconnected from each other. When it comes to connection, none of the stuff that we think matters ends up mattering at all. It doesn't matter in the long run. Your house, your car, who are you? Stubbornness makes no rational sense. As soon as our mind is made up about something, it's difficult for us to change because our the ego doesn't particularly like to admit that it's being wronged. Even when proven wrong, many will strengthen their resolve rather than loosen their grip. Do you know anybody that always has to have the last word? Ken? We form rigid and uncompromising points of view about people, about ideas, and about beliefs. And it makes it really difficult to change our mind in the future, even when we come across proof that we were previously wrong. And this is where the blind spot comes in. Dr. McCary writes, he says, even in the medical field, many of the physicians cling to what they were taught in medical school, even though evidence shows that it is no longer true. And there's a blind spot in all of us, be it religion, be it politics, be it race. We all have our blind spots. To what opinions are you firmly attached? Are you creating obstacles that aren't even there? How can you liberate your mind from its prison? It seems we cling to our opinions and mistakes just because we spend so much time, money, or energy making them. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay to change your mind and to move on. We can't force someone to suddenly see the world the way we do. Don't exhaust yourself getting frustrated with people for not using tools they don't have and may not even want to have. Live your life, lead by example, be authentic. Authenticity is imperative for true happiness. Don't attempt to be normal by trading your authenticity for approval. In The Gift of Imperfection, Brené Brown writes, authenticity is the daily practice of letting go who we think we are supposed to be and embracing who we are. So, summing this up, I have a few 6-word stories. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Look for positives when meeting people. Be authentic. Embrace who you are. Redirect unwanted thoughts. Don't stop them. Speak what's true, necessary, and kind. Why is always being right important? Live in line with your values. This is temporary. It will pass. Maybe not your values. Yes, I can get through this. Remove what obstructs access to happiness. Give yourself a gift. Forgive yourself. Think for yourself. Create your beliefs. Accept yourself. Block out external validation. Want peace? Start by being peaceful. Push your beliefs, push people away. Resolve to stay on your path. Different does not mean bad. Hatred stems from fear of unknown. Teach tolerance, but don't tolerate hate and harm. Think outside yourself. Empathy is the key. Want to impress? Be authentically yourself. Finally, do lies hold your mind hostage? Questions, comments?